Okay, folks, chapter 12, titled Romanesque Europe. So, as we saw in chapter 11, there's a period, the Carolingian as well as into the Ottonian, that is very influential from the Roman period, and that is going to segue into the rest of Europe during this time, during what's called the Romanesque period, and that literally means a period where everything is Romanesque. So everything is derived from certain Roman styles. And that is going to be broken down into four main areas. The first is going to be that of Spain, and I'm sorry, the first will be that of France. The second, that will be of Spain. The third will be the Holy Roman Empire, so part of that old Roman guard, which is finding its way in theology, moving into these new artistic concepts that are going to be derived of the old Rome, coupled with the Orthodox Christianity themes that we have already seen develop with the Carolingian as well into the Ottonian period. And then Italy is the third. So the rest of Italy, which will be south of the Holy Roman Empire, actually. And then also Normandy and England. So if you look at map 12.1, you can see how it's broken down. You have in the center the purple, which is France, which is what we're going to talk about first. Then the second, you see the kingdom of Leon and Castile, and then the Omanyap Apipalete, which is the section for Spain. And then the Holy Roman Empire is in the yellow. You can see it's half of Italy, and then up through the central part, or the central eastern part of Europe. And then you have Italy itself, and then Normandy and England, okay, up there to the northwest of where the Kingdom of France and the Holy Roman Empire is, right? Now, the one thing that's really going to break up the differences between these four main areas is architecture. Essentially, what the architecture looks like is how we're going to be able to truly differentiate these four different areas in particular. So let's begin with France, and where I want you to look at is a Saint Cernin, Saint Cernin, all right, and that will be figure. Well, before I talk about the figure in particular, know that during this time with the Spanish and with the French, a big part of the architecture that we're going to see, starting with Saint Cyrin, which is figure 12.5, is going to be the use of timber roofs. Okay? Timber roofs. We saw that in the old St. Peter's all the way back in late antiquity, and we're going to find that the use of these timber roofs are going to really start to come back. So some use of the timber roofs, and then also coupled with the timber roofs is innovative stone vaulting. So the ceilings are going to be used stone vaulting techniques instead of the cement techniques that we saw during the Roman period. But some of that will be coming back. So looking at Saint Cernin, we're going to be getting back to the basilica shape. And you can see with figure 12.6 the overall diagram of Saint Cernin. And you have the apse, which is to the far left. I'm sorry, you have the entryway, the narthex to the far west. Then you have the nave that runs down the middle, the aisleways to the north and the south, down the middle aisle, which is the nave, and then you get to the far east to the right, and you have a section that goes up and a section that goes down. That's the transept. And then to the far east, or to the far right, is going to be the apse itself. Okay. Now, one thing that's going to be new during this time is in Saint Cernin is you can see the radiating chapels. So these radiating chapels are little extra sections of illumination that is going to bring more light into the eastern part of this basilica style. So again, this is a basilica style, Basilica. All right, C I L C. Hold on. Basilica is Basilica. Sorry, folks, having a hard time with videos today. So, so Saint Sernin is going to be an example during this Romanesque period where the French are going to be bringing back the basilica style. But they're going to have new additive features, which is that radiating chapel that we see in figure 12.6. Okay. Saint Cyrin is also going to have vaulting ceilings. So high vaulting ceilings. So let's see if we have an image of that. We should. I don't see it. Okay, but it's going to have high vaulting ceilings. Again, it's going to be the stone vaulting that's going to be high and present in Saint Sernin. It's also going to have a wider and longer nave. So if you look at figure 12.6, you're going to see it's going to be a wider nave. It's not going to be so narrow. Um, and it's also going to be longer. So there's going to be more placement for the nave in these new basilica styles than in the past. I mentioned the radiating chapels, which is going to be present. Um, and this is going to be increased when because there's going to be more pilgrimages during this time. So more folks are going to be coming in to learn and to be present within these chapels and within these architectural churches called the basilica. And because of that pilgrimage, there's going to be an increase in ornamentation and the overall architectural design of it. Hence the use of the radiating chapels that are coming into play. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, and the reason those radiating chapels are there is remember in the transepts, which is the section that looks like two arms that are spread out, very much like a crucifixion. Um, that those radiating chapters or chapels are bringing extra light into the apse as well into the transepts, which is going to illuminate the relics and the reliquaries which are placed in that transept. Okay, so it's a practical purpose as well. Yeah. So there's going to be a large sculpture comeback in stone during this time as well, um, after them being missing for a long period of time. Okay, so stone sculptures were kind of out of the loop for a while, and they've been gone for a while, but they're going to be coming back. All right, and where I want you to look in regards to the stone sculptures making their way back is Christ in majesty. All right, Christ in majesty. And the example I want you to look at is, my goodness, where is it? There we go. Sorry, figure 12.9. Figure 12.9. This is a 4 foot 2 inch tall relief carving in marble, and we see Christ that is seated again, coming back into play. Again, very frontal, very representational. You see there's the nimbus present behind his head, but there's also the use of the organic drapery. So remember, like, there's a lot of Roman styles that are being present that are coming back during this time, and we're going to see them become more Advent. And so we can see that here with figure 12.9 with Christ in majesty. And this is, I'm just going to read from my notes. And it's a relief that's actually found in Saint Sernin. All right, so this is a relief stone piece that's found in Saint Sernin. And where this large stone sculpture is found is if you look back at figure 12.6 to the far east, that is called the ambulatory. And that ambulatory is that place right in front of the apse. Okay, so this is an area where you can actually circumambulate different very important features for the basilica And as you're circumambulating in prayer, there will be these large stone sculptures like Christ in majesty present there. Okay, so remember, prior to this time, a lot of large sculptural elements were not designed or created, but now during this Romanesque period, they're starting to come back. All right, and that's because large sculptural pieces were very prominent during the Roman Empire before it was transferred over to or as it moved before it moved into late antiquity. All right. And within Christ in majesty, there's the nimbus again behind his head, which is something that was used in late Roman period into late Roman Empire period into late antiquity. All right, that was developed in the Byzantine area, so that's making its way back, which is very Romanesque. There's also stationary symmetry from late Roman and that sense of antiquity. So, with that stationary presence of a figure, in this case Christ, seated upon this throne, that is a very Romanesque feature. And another thing that's a very Romanesque feature is his wide eyes, the use of the wide eyes, just like we saw with Constantine and the large colossal head sculpture of Constantine, where he's looking up in the sky. So those large, wide eyes, that actually dates all the way back to Octavius with Augustus sculptures in early Roman art, is starting to make its way back in as well. So symmetry, wide eyes, as well as the use of that nimbus halo symbol behind his head, which all come from different parts of the Roman Empire. All right, the nimbus from the Far East, where it was the Byzantine period, or into the Byzantine period in late antiquity, the symmetry, the stationary position, the frontal stationary position that was very Eastern Roman Empire, and then of course the wide eyes that dates all the way back to early Roman Empire. Again, these are all Romanesque types and styles. Okay, now let's look at some more Romanesque features. We can't cover and talk about all, but we will highlight certain features. And the next one that I want you to look at is the Old Testament prophet, figure 1213. We're going to look at this, and then we're also going to look at figure 1214, which is Christ's last judgment. Right? But first, let's look at 1213, Old Testament prophet, Jeremiah or Isaiah. Not quite sure who is who. But this is a column, right? And the prophet is showing more animation under a very orderly Christ. So this pillar of Jeremiah or Isaiah, Old Testament prophet, is below figure 12:14. All right, so this column of 12:13 is underneath figure 12:14, which is Christ, detail of the last judgment. All right. So let's talk about the column a little bit more. He's more animated, all right? There's more of that organic fluidity, right? The drapery is more linear, but it's still very flowing, right? Like organic drapery, like we've seen in the past that the Romans used, right? Because they got that from the Greeks. So it's a very Romanesque technique using that use of the twisted and overflowing and folding pleats of the organic drapery. There's also a couple of other things that are very interesting about this, and that is it has this sense of elongated abstractions. Okay, so element of elongated features, and the Romans actually would use that in some cases with their sculptures. They would elongate certain features and exaggerate them. If you recall, with Marcus Aurelius as the equestrian upon the horse, he was much bigger than the horse in proportion, but it was an abstraction to show a sense of pompousness and exaggeration. In this case, it's not about being pompous, it's more about just kind of using those abstractions of elongation in the overall body of this Old Testament prophet. and a sense of organic movement around this pillar and giving it this element of kind of pointedness. If you look at his feet are pointed down. They're not really carved out in relief in angle or in depth. It's more about the detail of having that flat frontal position, which is something that is coming from that late antiquity and that high Roman art period as Constantine stepped in and moved Rome over to what is present day Istanbul. Um, Also, there again, there's a lot of animation involved too. So, and whenever looking at the more historical and veristic sculptures that we saw during the Roman period, there was a lot of animation. Like there was a lot of facial animation, bodily gestures, and that's finding its way into Old Testament prophet as well. So again, these are Romanesque techniques, meaning that they're pulling from old previous concepts that were used in the past, and they're bringing them back alive during this Romanesque period. All right. So let's also use these same concepts and refer to Figure 1214 with Christ, a detail of Last Judgment. There is again this sense of symmetry, this fluidity of the garments that's upon the body. It almost looks like there's a skeletal system underneath the garments, but it's still flowing. There's still the symmetry. There's that element of animation. It almost looks like the body is being elongated. So these elongated features are very much present in showing that sense of animation that was very important and very much used during the Veristic period of the Roman Empire in their artwork during the early to high Roman Empire art. And again, the drapery is very, very linear in nature as well. Okay, so that pretty much covers the whole elements of what the French and what the Spanish were doing during this period. And what I'll do is I'll go on and end this video now, and then I'm going to get into the Holy Roman Empire, and then I'm also going to talk about Italy, Normandy, and England in the next video. All right? So that's the beginnings of Romanesque Europe. And again, it's called Romanesque because they're taking certain features that go all the way back to early Roman period, even the Republic of Rome, and starting to extract these techniques and reapplying them into new ideas coupled with the Christian Orthodox narratives and parables and biblical stories. Okay, we'll go from there.